Welcome back to The Art of the Trade. I'm your host, Greta, and on this show, we talk about real careers, real industries, and the stories behind them. So today, we are talking with my mom, who has worked in healthcare and corporate finance, and now helps people as a debt free lifestyle coach. So we'll talk about what those jobs really looked like, how she made big career moves, and what she's learned about money, work, and life along the way. So let's get started. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm excited to hear about your career journey and what insights you have to share. So starting with kind of your career journey, what was your first job?
My first job was a lottery machine. I worked on a lottery machine. It taught me a lot about finances and what you don't want to be doing in your life. I was 17 and I one time one of the mall manager guys came over and the lottery, like I think it was like almost at $1 million or something. It was called the lotto, and you pick six numbers on this sheet and you pick six numbers, and I think it was two blocks for $1 or something. But he had this big stack, and he came up and he said, here, I have to go back to my store. And there was this line going all the way through the mall. And I'm like, you can't leave the line. And I was like feeding these, and but he spent like $220, which was his whole week's salary back in the 70s. And I think he won like $20, like he had three or four numbers. But I saw then how much of a waste lottery is, gambling is, and things like that, especially with the man that used to come in all the time, and he'd spend $60 to $70 a day in the daily number, and he'd never win, and he'd always call me a jinx. And when one time the numbers went off and he came back over to me and he threw his little ticket at me and he goes, you rang up the wrong number. And I'm like, okay. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, you won $500. That was a lot of money in the late 70s,
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, that's not the number I played. And he was all upset. And I thought, what? And I'm like, you can go inside and get your money. And I gave him his ticket back, and I could see an addiction. And it's just something I never played, was the lottery, any kind of gambling, like my number one pet peeve. So that was
Yeah.
my first job.
So, like, long story short, if you could give a synopsis of your resume, what is it?
Well, I worked at a hospital as a buyer, really enjoyed that. It was really great atmosphere. Everybody was like family there. We really had a good time working together, but we had goals and we had to achieve those goals. And that job I really enjoyed. Then I went to work for a surgery center in purchasing, and that was very interesting to see all the inventory they had there. The first thing I did was looked at all the inventory. It was a startup surgery center. So I looked at all their inventory and I thought, wow, why do we have 20 boxes of this suture and 10 of this? And the nurses were telling me that, oh, this, surgeon uses 3 boxes of this just in one surgery. And I'm like, okay, but we get deliveries Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We can get the suture anytime we need it, unless it's on back order, of course. But I ended up returning millions of dollars of inventory, and I got the inventory down to a reasonable level that was reasonable for a startup surgery center. So that was called just in time inventory system. So I did that. That I really enjoyed. It was really great seeing the different events that happen, and that was very different than working at the hospital, because you'd have somebody that was actually on the table. So there'd be a patient on the table, meaning they were already put out with anesthesia and we didn't have what we needed for the surgery. And that wasn't just that surgery center, that's any hospital. Happens all the time. Every hospital, will do the same thing. Oh my gosh, we don't have this a set they need, an item they need, blah blah blah. But anyway, so I left there and then I did some projects. here and there that were term projects, hired on as for projects. And then I got a job at a Fortune 500 and in the accounting department, and it was very interesting, very challenging, very different than working for a nonprofit. I really enjoyed it. It was very challenging, and I ended up being promoted to a supervisor. And so I had some people reporting to me, and very challenging to try to get everybody working, as best they could in their particular facet of their job. And so then I left there, and now I'm doing my own thing as a debt debt counselor, like debt elimination counselor, lifestyle change counselor, or not coach. Excuse me, I'm using the wrong word. Coach, and just trying to help people get a hold of their debt so they can live more with more freedom.
So, what kind of gave you that aha moment from supply chain finance, corporate retail finance, I guess, um, to kind of lifestyle debt free coach?
Well, I've been interested in the debt coaching for years. I've had this business kind of on the side, and I love talking about money, as you know.
Hmm.
That's all I talk about. I read every book there is. Dave Ramsey, Warren Buffett, you name it. I've read it, and every time a new book comes out on finance, I like to read it so I can get little bits and pieces. And like you might read 5 books, I'll say, here, read these 5 books, and then I'll read the same 5 books, and I'll come out with these points were important to me. And then you'll come out, well, I didn't get that. I got this, and this. And so I read different aspects of finance and then take different pieces of it and make my own version of what I want for my financial goals and my financial life out of that.
So, how do you tackle like or I guess compare like bigger company finance to personal finance?
Well, if you can't or don't know how to handle your own finances,
Hmm.
it's highly unlikely that you're going to be successful in any kind of finance role in a company. Because if you can handle your own finances, there are two different bears though: personal finance, corporate finance, but you're still handling money.
Hmm.
So if you aren't sure how to balance your own budget at home, it's very unlikely that you're going, even if you have a degree, that you're going to be successful handling money in a company. Anywhere I ever worked, whatever was put in front of me was my money because I owned it. Like I owned it, and I took responsibility for it to safeguard it. So that's the same thing I do in my personal finance.
Yeah, I think if anyone is kind of looking for a major in college or anything, I would definitely consider business or specifically finance or economics, because economics is like kind of the market, and then once you know the market, you can kind of learn the financials of the market, um, and then those two kind of tie together. Because I think if you and like I'm not saying if you go to college for finance, like you can't learn it off of YouTube because you can easily learn finance off of YouTube.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
in college they teach you kind of the different views of finance. So like I took like a class on stocks, and then I went to the New York Stock Exchange and then learned about like that side. But then I also took a real estate finance class. Then you learn about like home equity loans and like all of the stuff. So I think finance is definitely a major that I would consider if you're kind of
Yeah.
looking into the business,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because it could help you within your career, but also personal finance
Right,
as
right.
well.
There's different kinds of finance degrees. You can get personal finance, you can do corporate finance,
Hmm.
there's all kinds of, you did economics, so but the more you know about how money works, the better you are at managing your own. And I truly believe that.
Hmm.
The more financial literate you become, the better you will be with your own money. And you want to be good with your money because you want your future self to thank you for the things that you're doing for yourself today.
Hmm.
So, if you waste and your income is here and your expenses are up here, you're actually going into debt. You're living above your means. You want to live below your means.
Hmm.
So that extra money between your income and your expenses, you can do what you need to do with. You can save it. You can invest it. Pay off debt.
Hmm.
If you have debt, I sincerely, even a mortgage. Say you have no car loans, no credit cards, no student loan, but you have a mortgage. I suggest paying that off as soon as possible. There's ways to do it besides making the extra payment a year or doubling up principal payments. There's other ways to pay that,
Hmm.
and I have that knowledge. So I just think that your future self is really going to thank you for your good decisions that you're going to make today.
So, talking about student loans or like loans in general, if someone has student loans, and if you're that person, so like for example, say me, I have student loans, and say my one of my loans, the minimum payment's $85. If
Okay.
I double that payment or even put like $120 towards that loan, what kind of impact does that have? Because some people don't even know that like doubling the payment could decrease the life of the loan or like what?
Yeah, if you take I have spreadsheets that I developed
Mm,
that there's the snowball, method of paying off debt. There's the avalanche method. So one method is taking all your debts, listing what both of them, you list all your debts in a spreadsheet. And the one you're going to put the highest interest rate at the top.
mhm,
So it's the avalanche.
mhm,
Yeah. And so say the highest interest rate is, a Visa card at 18%. You want to pay that off immediately as soon as possible. So say the minimum payment's $100 a month. If you can get out of your cancel subscriptions, don't go to the gym, whatever if it's depending on how dedicated you are,
mhm,
you want to get rid of as many things that you spend money on. Don't go out to eat, take lunches to work, don't go to Starbucks, all these things. So take all that money and put it towards that debt and pay it off. So then you're going to have one less debt that's paid off.
mhm,
You had the $100, right? And then you had whatever extra money. You can put those two things, $100 minimum payment and the extra money you're putting towards that, bring it down and pay off the next highest interest rate. Now
mhm.
that's one method. The other method is the snowball method, of course. If you list your lowest balance at the top, that's the first one you're going to pay off. Yes, this one's got 18% interest, but this one has 5% interest, but it's only $500. And you can knock that out as soon as possible so you get momentum and drive and you're starting to see results. You're like, wow, I paid one off already. So then you're going to bring those extra payments down to the second one and start paying that
Mhm.
off. But so those two methods they're very good for paying off debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I use them kind of interchangeably. So, like, some months, if I'm not feeling motivated, I'll do the snowball method, knock out a loan. And then I'm like, okay, well, I should probably, hit the higher ones first. And then if I to me, I use them interchangeably. But to your point, I think the avalanche is probably the more, I don't want to say responsible, but the smartest way of doing it because then you pay less interest over time.
Right, right. I think if you're dedicated and you're disciplined, that is the way to go. But if you're just starting out and you need that motivation, doing the snowball, which is the lowest debt first, the one with the lowest balance, you want to pay that one off first. So you get like a little like, ooh, a dopamine rush, I paid one off already. So then you're going to bring those down to the next one and pay that off, the lowest balance one,
Hmm.
only if, your way is great because the higher the interest rate, you want to get that one paid off.
Yeah.
But if you're finding that you need the motivation, then you should do the lowest balance first. But you can do them interchangeably, just like you're saying.
Hmm.
As long as you're tackling your debt on a monthly basis, that is what you want. That's
Hmm.
what the goal is, to get rid of all your debt.
Yeah. Yeah. So if someone is like my age or even like any age, um, like what would you kind of recommend for me? Like if I were to give you like say like 7 loans, student loans, um, or if I had a car loan, like looking at my would you like look at my income and like all my credit cards and like kind of go through that way? Like with me on a phone call or like
Well, I could
what are
sit
you?
down with you and look at it, develop a plan for you in person, or, on a FaceTime, whatever you wanted to do. But the first thing you need to do is figure out what your income is per month, your take home net income, what goes into your paycheck.
Mhm.
That, and then look at your expenses, your minimum payments on all your loans, and then your rent or your mortgage, your utilities, your cable, your phone, everything. Like things like gifts, like $25 a month for gifts, just, so it's in there. Your gym membership, subscriptions, everything, insurance, and your food, you know, list those out. Now, if you go out to eat all the time, you know that's going to be in there too.
Mhm.
you know but when if that number, your expenses, is higher than or equal to your income, you need to get rid of some things. You need to look at this is a first step, looking at your budget and looking at to make sure you are living below your means.
Mhm.
Because if you're living above your means, first of all, you need to do something immediately. But if you're living below your means, like a little bit, you kind of want to put a cushion in there so you can get that extra money to pay off your loans and your credit. And then after we'd look at that, we would get a spreadsheet up and look and see which one you were interested in doing. Maybe you want both of them, the snowball or the avalanche, and then you figure out how much extra money you have to sock at your debt each month,
Mhm.
and set the spreadsheets up, and then you're on your own. We all make or break ourselves. If we don't want to do this, that's fine. But where are we going to be in 10, 15 years? Then
Mhm.
when 10 or 15 years goes by, that's 10 or 15 years that you're not going to have, that have already been gone, that you could have been saving money, and instead of going whatever people are doing, going out to the bars, going out to the restaurants, buying clothes and things like that. So you want to get value out of your money,
Mhm.
and keep as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah, cuz I always like tell my friends like if they ask me and I know it sounds harsh, but like sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, I can't like go out tonight." Not that I like drink or anything, but like go out to eat. Um and instead of doing that, and I know this sounds like rude, but like I'll go to the gym because work on my health. And like even like it's kind of sidetracked, but like even the other day, like I got new gym clothes because my shirts were like gross. And Liz was like, "Oh my god, like I'm so proud of you. Like you actually like spent money and like got shirts." And I was like, I just like I don't know. First of all, clothes are so expensive nowadays that I'm like, why am I paying $40 for something that's like just covering like up here? Like I don't know, I just think it's stupid. Um but anyway, I guess that goes back to your point where it's like you're in control of your happiness. So if you want to go out and go to the bars and like I'm not saying you can't, but like if you do it on a consistent basis and you're going into debt to go to the bar, like debt for beer, like that seems like an issue.
Yeah,
Like,
and like I was out somewhere and someone ordered a drink and it was like some fancy drink and it was like 12.50, and now this was a couple of years ago and I'm like, 12.50 for that. It was like
yeah,
this little tiny drink, but it's delicious. Okay. I mean, if that, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And I'm thinking up here, oh my word, I would never do that. But this person, this is what they enjoyed. But, when you spend more than you make, or if you're a millionaire and you don't have any debt, and you want to order a $12.50 drink, go to it. Hey, that's great.
yeah,
But we want to have like ourselves set. So I don't want to say retire, but maybe you want to leave your job in 25 years and you don't want to work at the type of job that you have now and you want to go do something helping other people, like is what I'm doing. Um, you know, you you have to save to get to that. You can't quit your job and expect to go do something you love when you have no money.
yeah. No, but that goes to the quote I read the other day where I think it was Gary Vee. Um, he talks about kind of just like success, like making money and like being successful in yourself and like all that stuff. But he was saying with like materialistic things, like he's wealthy, but he was like, why am I buying these materialistic things to impress people I don't like?
Yeah, it's a big
And
Dave Ramsey
like,
quote.
well, and my thing is like, yeah, I might get instant satisfaction, but like in the end, it's like, am I buying, like, granted, I like my golden gooses, my sneakers, but like, am I buying these because I like them, or am I buying them to fit in, or like
Right.
so people can look at me and be like, oh, she has golden gooses. Like with my Lexus, yes, I like the Lexus because it was big. Um, I could afford it. I just didn't want to anymore. But I'm like, why do I have this? Like I don't drive it. I go into office like once a week. So I sold that and paid cash for a Prius. And you can call me all the names you want, but I am also not in $20,000 in debt
Yeah,
with it
and you
just
pay cash
sitting,
for it.
yeah, with
So,
it
I
just
mean,
sitting at
that's
the dealership.
amazing. And you get great gas mileage. I mean, you're telling us when you're filling up your car, and I'm like, do you have to rub it in? I mean,
545 miles.
yeah, I have an older Toyota. I don't owe anything on it. My insurance, that's the thing. If you get an older car too, like the older the car you get, the less the insurance,
Yeah,
especially if you don't have collision. Yeah,
my
but you gotta have
insurance
money in
went
the bank.
down about like 10 to $20.
What?
My insurance went down like $10, $20.
Wow.
But granted, I also have mileage in there that like is very low because I don't drive it.
Mm-hmm.
So with your clients, whether it's like someone my age or someone older, what kind of mistakes do you see that are most common in people?
Well, with finances living above their means,
Hmm.
they're taking advances on credit cards to pay their bills. They've got bill collectors calling them at home, saying, "Hey, you forgot to pay your bill," or they're getting emails and things like that. But living above their means is definitely, I see that all the time, and I see that a lot of people are in debt. So if they get rid of the debt, and they need to look at their debt, and I think it's very hard for a lot of people because they know that they're in trouble with their finances,
Hmm.
but they don't want to look at it because it's scary. It's scary. So there's a lot of ways to get rid of debt without bankruptcy, without consolidation loans,
Hmm.
but you have to be dedicated and you have to want to do it.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to make changes.
So I tell all my friends that, I mean, finances are very vulnerable, whether it's student debt, car debt, or just like looking at your paycheck allocation. But I tell people, even at work, I'm like, yeah, it might be a stressful time with like month end or whatever, but why stress over it? Like, we're gonna have to do it anyway. So let's just get it done. Let's just put our heads together and get it done. Like the more we stress about it, the more of an impact and a long-term impact it's going to have on not only yourself but
Hmm.
your
Hmm.
counterparts. So if you're not married yet, but like if you're married and you guys don't talk about finances and you guys are just like sitting here like, yeah, like did we pay the mortgage? But I don't want to talk about it. It's going to create even a bigger issue down the road.
Anxiety.
So I think just facing the problem itself, and yeah, it's like that's like one of the main things in today's world that is hard for people. But I think like I've been saying is like you're in charge of your own happiness. So no one's gonna pay my bills except for me. Like you're not paying my bills, Jake's not paying my bills. And it's like, yes, like all my friends want to have a good time, want to go out to dinner, but like in the end, and I hate to say this because it's the truth, deep down, they don't care if I'm late on a payment. They don't care that I have credit card debt, which I don't, but like they realistically they don't care. So the only person that should care about your finances is yourself because that's the
Hmm.
only person that's going to actually get you out of debt
Yeah,
and put
you're
you in a better
responsible
place.
for yourself.
Yeah.
We're all responsible for ourselves, regardless, like whatever we do. If I go out and buy a cheeseburger at McDonald's, I'm responsible for eating that and gaining weight from that. I can't afford to
Yeah.
be eating that. I don't eat that kind of food. I had some surgery recently and gained some weight. So I need to be careful about what I'm eating.
Yeah.
So we all need to be accountable for our own self. We're nobody's responsible for us. Nobody's coming to save us. You need to and blaming other people. My mom said this, my dad did that, my sister did this. My ex-boyfriend did this, my ex-husband, my ex-wife, whatever. You know, it doesn't matter. That's in the past. You need to move past it, and you need to say, okay, this is my debt. I need to get rid of it. You need to look at it. You need to write it down and have a plan and be able to change.
Hmm.
Because that's one of the things I find that's really difficult for a lot of people, even my age, is change. They want to do the same thing they've done year after year. That's why a lot of people, you know them today, and in a year from now, they're the same person.
Yeah.
They haven't grown, they haven't changed, they haven't, they keep saying, oh, I want to get a new car. My car's, nickel and diming me to death, and they're still driving this car that they're putting more money in than it's worth, or somebody had told me, oh, I want to move, I want to move, I want to move, and I've been
Hmm.
hearing this for 10 years because they're miserable where they live and they're still living in the same place, because
Yeah.
that's their mindset. You got to be willing to change and grow. You don't want to be this same person today that you are tomorrow or a year from now. You want to be somebody totally different than you are in a year than you are right now. And that's growing and learning. And they don't teach financial literacy in school.
No.
They don't teach you, because, this, a lot of things are run by corporations and they want you to keep the economy going. So they
Yeah.
want you to spend money,
Yeah.
so, um, you just
I
got
mean,
to do what's right for yourself.
I think in the end, it's just like a self sabotage. Because if you know there's a problem and you're not doing anything about it, then that just sounds to me like you're making excuses to not fix the problem and face the problem.
Right. But what you said is true. A lot of people are scared to look at their finances.
Yeah.
When I deal with people, I don't go say, "Hey, so and so came to me and they have X amount of dollars in debt. Oh my gosh." You know, that is nobody's business but yours. And if you want to confide in me, I don't tell anybody anything. It's a very personal thing. People are embarrassed. They don't want to look at their debt. They're embarrassed about it. They know that they have a problem. But
Hmm.
the minute you start facing it, all you have to do is make a list of all your debt, write down the balance of all your debt, the interest rate, and your minimum payments. And then
Yeah.
you've got a base, and I can help you do anything that you need to get yourself out of debt
Yeah.
without bankruptcy or without consolidation loans.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of view, and you might disagree, but I kind of view life as a video game. Like, and the cheat codes that only some people know are financial literacy, health, wealth, which is financial literacy, and just doing life right. Because,
Yeah,
like,
that's really,
people view
yeah,
life so stressful when it doesn't really have to be. Like,
right.
if you just have your finances in check, like, I don't, but like, I could sit on the couch and just like enjoy my life. But there are some people that don't have their finances in check and they're sitting here like, oh my God, like, I have to pay my credit card statement tomorrow and I don't have money. And they're still sitting here.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you view life as a video game, there's one endpoint where hopefully you know what that is. Everyone kind of dies off in the end. But the cheat codes are finance, wealth, and health. Like, I think that's how I kind of view it.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that. That's a really neat analogy. I like it. It it really pertains to your age group, you know. And like I think some people get so stressed out, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to look at my debt." They get their credit card statement and they're like, "I'm going to go shopping. I'm
Mhm.
going to go to the restaurant." So
Yeah.
they go there and they get that dopamine effect from high from buying something or whatever, and they're feeling good for a little bit, and then they get that credit card statement and they're like, oh man,
Yeah.
and then they have to pay it off. So it's just really important to be in tune with your finances and live below your means.
Mhm.
You're below your income's here, your expenses are here, and you've got a big cushion, not like right here,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, they do preach that the less stuff you have, whether it's like, like a pillow or something,
less
subscription,
anxiety.
the less stuff you have, the better off you're going to be. So, like, would you rather sit here and be like, what am I even paying for in subscriptions? Like, have 15 subscriptions or only have one?
Right, right.
Like, if you, in my opinion, I think if you can't easily list out all your expenses, there's an issue.
Hmm,
Like, if
hmm.
I were to ask you, like, oh, what are you paying for? And you're like, I think I'm paying for Hulu. Wait, but I don't know actually. Then, like, maybe, and not a bad thing because everyone has been there, but maybe that's a sign that you should probably look deeper into your finances and kind of
Right.
consult somebody
Hmm.
for it. Because, like I said, I can list all of mine out. Like, I have a spreadsheet that has all of my expenses from like student loans to the gym to CapCut for podcasting. Um, like, I think the less stuff you have, the better off you're mentally and physically gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, I do think clutter creates anxiety,
Mm,
so it just the more things you have, I'm not a minimalist in any way. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not a minimalist. I don't know if I ever will be, but who knows? I like change. So, down the road, maybe I'll get rid of everything. I don't know. I like to buy and sell,
yeah,
you know, and use that money to pay anything that I need to pay. But if you think of it, and you go buy a pair of jeans for $100, and they're like the Mugsy jeans, they're cool.
yeah,
But then when I looked them up, I went, oh, I think they were like 124 or $148 or something, free
yeah,
shipping.
yeah,
But they look really comfortable. But am I am I willing to spend that kind of money on one pair of pants? That's a lot.
yeah,
So I don't know. My priorities have drastically changed over the years with what I want in my life, what I need. I don't need fancy clothes. I don't care if people don't like that I don't color my hair. I don't wear makeup. This is me, and this is how I want to live. And if somebody else wants to do what, hey, you go do your thing. I'm not judging you. I don't care whatever you want to do, but this is my life,
Yeah.
and everybody has to live their life the way they would like to or should be living like that. You shouldn't be doing things to fit in,
Yeah.
buying clothes just to fit in. Like when you guys were in school, we were at the Hollister store, we were at Abercrombie. What's the other one? Aerie,
Mhm.
Aeropostale or something.
Yeah.
And it was always like you had to look all the same when you're walking in the door. And I'm like, this is dumb. And it was expensive,
Yeah.
but I like the individuality of being a person. You're different than this person's different from this person, and we can all learn from each other that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was telling Jake, like, going back to the reselling or even just like buying stuff cheap. Um, he didn't know like what Poshmark or Mercari was. So when I was looking for golf stuff, I was like, I'm not, because of course I asked Jake, hey, what's the best golf bag or like what's the best golf stuff? And like me just coming from finance, I'm like, I'm not spending that. Like that's just like ridiculous. Like it was like a bag and it was like a carry bag that you just like walk the course with and it was
Okay.
$165. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I looked on Poshmark, found the same one. The guy, he was like messaging me, his wife was like, because it was only $35. And I was like, are you
Wow.
sure? Like I didn't want to, I wanted to make sure it wasn't like a scam. And he goes, yeah, like my wife's making me get rid of all my golf stuff, so I'm just trying to get rid of it. So I get this bag in the mail, and he's like, oh, you bought it? And I was like, yeah, and guess how much I bought it for? And he's like, well, didn't you just buy it from the site? And I was like, no, I literally bought it for $35. And it had the tags on it and everything. And I think like whenever I want something or need something, like the golf bag or like I don't know, like tennis shoes. Like even my tennis shoes, my Asics, I got off Poshmark, new with tags, $40,
Oh wow.
and they're like $150 shoes. Like I always go on those sites first, and then give it the 3 day rule. So if I like forget about it
Hmm.
after 3 days, then I didn't need it.
Right. The thing with
But
that is like you can go in there and look for something and put it in your favorites.
yeah,
And if you're going to make a purchase, I'm going to say over $20, you put it in there and you think about it overnight
yeah,
and or for a few days, and then like I've done this at the mall. I had to have this purse. It was like a Stone Mountain purse. I No, it was a what's that store that went out of business? Coldwater Creek. And it was expensive. And I looked at it and I went, I love that. And I waited a week
yeah,
and I did not buy that purse, but I found it on one of those sites
hmm,
and it was like $30 and I bought it. Well,
yeah,
guess what?
hmm,
I didn't use it that much.
yeah,
It got added to the collection,
yeah,
which I've gotten rid of because anything I don't use, I want to kind of get moving on its way. Somebody else might enjoy that purse and then I can get something for it. I know what I wanted to say earlier was if you buy a pair of jeans for $100
hmm,
and the Mugsy jeans,
yeah,
it is very rare you will make your money back on that pair of jeans.
yeah,
Unless for some reason Mugsy goes out of business and everybody's got this thing for Mugsy jeans and now they're collectible,
yeah,
which, that happens sometimes, but it's very rare. But it's very, very rare that you will get your $100 out of that. You'll be lucky if you get 50 for those. And you obviously would have worn them,
yeah.
so, you know, the return on investment with clothing is just not there.
I mean, like I just told you, the Asics that I got
Mm.
them for like $40,
Yeah,
and the
right,
lady
right.
bought them for 150.
Yeah,
Like, imagine selling that and you're like, okay, fine.
yeah.
And I literally just like, and like, it's sad to even say I made out because
Yeah,
I
but
think
some
forty
people don't,
dollars.
they don't even put two and two together. They're just selling it because they're like, I never wore this, I'm getting rid of it. Put it on Poshmark,
Yeah,
and that's all they're going to get for it. But they're not looking at the tag or, I mean, when you think about it, when you buy that $150 item, you're $150 out right now.
hmm,
You just spent $150. So first of all, the first thing to ask, do you really need that item after all?
yeah,
Do you need it? okay, you decide that it's a need, or your tennis shoes are really looking ratty, you're going to replace them. So, yes, okay, it's a need. Now, what can I get them for?
Yeah.
Somewhere somebody else bought them, didn't wear them, they've got the tags on them, no brainer,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But you want to put yourself out the lowest amount possible, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for sharing kind of like your career, what you do. If anyone is looking for personal budgeting or kind of just finance advice, where can they find you?
Yeah, I have a Facebook page. It's Zero Debt for Me, and that's spelled out zero debt for me. You can message me through there. You can text me at 717-645-5296. Or I have a YouTube channel that you can watch my videos. They're very plain videos, very, very down to earth videos, nothing fancy, no, not a lot of editing or anything like that. I'm just talking about a subject and to get the information out there. So that's Zero Debt for Me on YouTube. And I also have an email, which is zerodebtforme@gmail.com. So I'd love to hear from you. If you like to chat about your debt or you want to get started, give me a shout and I'd love to help you.
Yeah. And this is truly what this podcast is about, whether you're 26 or, in your 50s, 60s, 70s, you truly don't know what your career or the world will take you. So like I said, that's truly the art of the trade. So we will have more insightful episodes coming soon. So stay tuned.
And thank you for having me, Greta.
Of course.